You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another opinions video. I haven't done one of these in a while. I've done my unpopular opinions in a couple of different ways. I did my unpopular Dragon Ball opinions, 2 different versions of that. I did things I like that everyone hates and things I hate that everyone likes. And I've talked about Watchmen a little on the channel before, but I've never really gone in depth and done a whole video dedicated to it. Obviously, I have recently just streamed through both parts of the video game Watchmen: The End Is Nigh on the PS3. Maybe I'll do a review of that in the future. I don't know how much I'll have to say. It was a pretty fun game. It was very repetitive, but I liked the story, even though it was very short and didn't really have a lot going to it. I still liked what was there. But yeah, I do really like Watchmen, and I thought it'd be fun to do a video talking about my unpopular or controversial Watchmen opinions. Now, some of these opinions might be more popular than others, and these are in no particular order, so let's just jump right into it. So the first opinion I have, and this is one that I do feel is very unpopular, but it's also popular with some of the fan base who got into it because of the movie, and that is that the movie Watchmen is considerably better than the comic Watchmen. Don't get me wrong, the comic is still great, but the movie is better in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't like the movie because they say that, oh, Zack Snyder didn't understand Watchmen, or they don't like the way that it's portrayed or the things that were omitted from the comics, but it's like, I think he got the story down just like it needed to. I liked the changes to the ending. I think the way that Ozymandias carries out his plan makes way more sense with a Dr. Manhattan explosion than an alien invasion, because the aliens are just out of nowhere. It's just, oh look, he made an alien monster, isn't that cool? I also think the movie does a much better job at having chemistry between Night Owl and Rorschach. In the comic, Night Owl doesn't really seem to give a shit about Rorschach's death, whereas in the movie, he genuinely seems to care and actually gets mad and punches Ozymandias a bunch of times because of it. Whereas in the comic, the whole time, he's just having sex with Lori, and they give this really bad line about how it smells like nostalgia, which is already cringe, but it's even more cringe if you've been reading the comic the whole time, and you keep getting these things about Adrian Veidt's, that's Ozymandias for those of you who don't know, about his perfume brand, Nostalgia. And I think Alan Moore thought that this nostalgia thing was like super fucking deep, and that's why he threw that line in there. And I just thought it was kind of obnoxious, and I think the fact that he just fucks Lori right there, right after Ozymandias just killed millions of people, is kind of lame. So I just think that overall, there's a lot more chemistry between Night Owl and Rorschach, and he genuinely seems like he was his partner. Whereas in the comics, they just seem kind of indifferent to each other. Like, yeah, they tolerate each other. Rorschach does seem to like Night Owl to an extent. Night Owl does somewhat seem to like Rorschach in the comic, but they have hardly any scenes where they seem to actually be friends, whereas in the movie, there are multiple little moments that they kind of have together. Like Night Owl apologizing for insulting Rorschach, or the two of them kind of sort of having a moment in the bar where Rorschach kind of tells Night Owl not to attack those guys in front of the civilians. Which I think that's only in the director's cut. I'm not 100% sure. The director's cut is the one I have seen the most times now. I've seen Watchmen the movie a total of 3 times now. No, 4. Sorry, I've seen it 4 times. I saw it originally on a DVD with just the theatrical cut. Then I saw the theatrical cut one more time. I saw the director's cut. No, I've seen it 5 times. I saw the director's cut when I got the Blu-ray. Watched the director's cut again with Corbin, and then watched the director's cut again with my friend Rem just recently. So, I just think the movie does a lot of things better. It doesn't have that really annoying subplot about the pirate ship, you know, the Tales from the Black Freighter. That's why I don't care to own the Ultimate Cut. I'd much rather just have the director's cut, because Tales from the Black Freighter, I always felt just kind of interrupted the story, and I often find myself skipping over it when I'm rereading the comic. Like, I know he's trying to have some parallels and some symbolism between the story in the comic, and within Watchmen itself, but it's just kind of boring. Like, I don't really care about this pirate ship and stuff, because it's not actually happening in the story. And again, yeah, I know he's trying to have some symbolism and be deep there, but it's like, I just want to see the story progress. The movie also just has a lot of great lines that weren't in the comic. Like the line, "I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me." That is a movie-only line. Or the line, "Men get arrested, dogs get put down." That's also a movie-only line. And even the lines that are in the comic, I feel are done better in the movie. Just because of the arrangement of the words. For instance, in the comic, Rorschach says, "Not even in the face of Armageddon, never compromise." And that's the end of the line. In the movie, The words are rearranged, so he says, "Never compromise, not even in the face of Armageddon. That's always been the difference between me and you, Daniel." And this next one kind of ties in with the movie being better, but I feel like this deserves its own little section. So the next one is, Night Owl in the comic is kind of a bitch, sucky-ass character, whereas Night Owl in the movie is actually really cool, and I like him a lot. Like, yeah, he's still kind of a simp in the movie, but not to the same degree that he was in the comic. The comic, he just is pathetic the entire time, and he still has kind of pathetic moments in the movie, but I feel like he genuinely gets better as the movie goes on, whereas in the comic, he just stays kind of a beta bitch. Obviously, his lines with Rorschach and actually having a chemistry with him, I think, helped make him a more interesting character in the movie. But I also just think that overall, he's kind of a shit character in the comic. He legit just says, okay, yeah, we won't tell anyone about what you did, Ozymandias. Whereas in the movie, he at least resists before finally, eventually, reluctantly agreeing to it. Again, he'd rather have sex with Laurie than worry about what happens to Rorschach after Rorschach tells Dr. Manhattan he's going to tell everyone about it. In the comic, nobody even does anything bad to Ozymandias after what he did. At least in the movie, Night Owl punches the shit out of him. So I just think overall he's a better character in the movie than he is in the comic. He's just kind of lame in the comic. Like, he still has cool moments, but overall he's just much more likable in the movie for me. Alright, now this next opinion, I feel like, is pretty common for most people in Watchmen, and that is Rorschach is the best character, and is the most morally correct character in the story. This is not what Alan Moore, the author, intended for you to take away from it. He wanted you to hate Rorschach and to think he was a bad example. He wanted you to side with Ozymandias, because Alan Moore is a commie piece of shit, but we'll get into that a little more later. With Rorschach, he's easily the best character in the movie. He's badass, he's much more, again, morally sound and consistent than a lot of the other characters. He knows where he stands. Yeah, he's extreme. He only believes in black and white, no gray areas. And he treats every crime effectively equally, for the most part. I definitely think that he's easily the most interesting character, and the one that you root for to win, especially when Ozymandias kills millions of people, and you're supposed to think he's the good guy. At least Rorschach had the balls to say, no, people need to know about this. And in the comic, Ozymandias does say, oh, well, he's not really a reliable source anyway, no one will believe him. But in the movie, he doesn't say that line. But Rorschach's just such a good character. Like, he's one of the coolest characters in the series. Alan Moore wrote him to be sort of a satire, sort of mocking Steve Ditko's characters, Mr. A and The Question. But if anything, he just made a badass, if not somewhat extreme and deranged version of them. Rorschach is easily my favorite American comic book character. I love him. He's great. And again, Alan Moore thinks by putting in lines talking about how he smells and having him be like kind of homeless and eat beans and break into people's house, he thinks this is enough to make you think he's pathetic when he kicks ass the entire story. He gets thrown in prison, and all the inmates are out to get him, and he kicks all of their asses systematically. But again, I don't think this opinion is that unpopular. I do think most fans, especially who came to Watchmen after the movie, do agree that Rorschach is the best character. And on top of that, I think the movie does make him even better in a lot of ways. In the movie, I think Zack Snyder was trying to paint Rorschach as the good guy, whereas Alan Moore was not. But even in the comic, Rorschach is clearly the good guy. And I know that's not what Alan Moore intended, which brings me to my next one. I don't like Alan Moore. He's fucking stupid. He's a commie, he's crazy, he believes a lot of weird kooky things with like weird culty stuff that I'm not even going to get into. But on top of that, he's a hardcore leftist. And obviously you know how I feel about hardcore leftists. That said, he can write really good comics. Watchmen is one of my favorite comics of all time. Another one of my favorite comics of all time is V for Vendetta, which Alan Moore also wrote. But he's so delusional with the way he thinks that you're going to interpret the characters. He thinks you're going to listen to Ozymandias' reasoning and think that it makes sense. What he does killing millions of people. When it's like, you do realize, had you just gone to Dr. Manhattan, you could have had him do plenty of other things to solve this problem. The world was on the verge of World War III, it's true, but he could have teleported all the nukes into space. He could have done a threat of doing something. There's a lot of things he could have done. He could have worked with Dr. Manhattan to save the world and come to a solution. But instead, he decided he needed to take the credit because of his ego. Ozymandias had to be the savior because he has a messiah complex. And again, I've never understood the idea, well, I killed millions to save billions. No! Fuck you! Again, he was preventing a hypothetical thing from happening, which granted it likely would have happened. The world could have easily gone into chaos and had a big-ass war. But he's using hypotheticals. It's like a crazy overblown version of the trolley problem, which I always thought was a stupid thing anyway, because the trolley problem is so ridiculously unrealistic. When you scale it up so much, it gets to be way more complex, and it's like, with the trolley problem, that at least you know, in this theoretical scenario, the people are going to die. Whereas, with this war that would have happened, you have no way of fucking knowing that. Because you're just going on your own projections and what you think is going to happen. How the fuck do we know that Ozymandias' death toll was lower than the death toll that would have been with the war? Because we don't know how it would have played out. There could have been a surrender, there could have been de-escalation. Again, they could have used Dr. Manhattan to do all sorts of crazy Deus Ex Machina stuff to save the world. But no, Ozymandias is supposed to be the good guy in Alan Moore's weird, twisted mind. Not only that, but they have, like, there's, like, world peace immediately after the Dr. Manhattan attack, quote-unquote, in the movie, and then the alien invasion in the comic. Again, the Dr. Manhattan one makes way more sense. Like I said, I think the movie's better. But in both versions, the New Frontiersman has no news because there's world peace, and everyone's just singing Kumbaya, being happy, and it's like, do you realistically think that's what would fucking happen after millions die? I think they would be working on a way to try and kill Dr. Manhattan, number one, and I feel like all the other countries involved would probably blame the US and attack it because Dr. Manhattan was American. I don't just think they would sit by and take it like Alan Moore thinks they would, because he has this weird utopian view that would just immediately cause world peace. I don't think it would. I think it's way too complex of a situation that there's no way every single world leader would just sit back and be like, yeah, I'm scared of that big blue scary man, or yeah, I'm scared of that big alien thing. If anything, they would try to annihilate the aliens, or they would try to kill Dr. Manhattan, again, depending on which continuity we're going on. In the movie, like I said, they would easily go after America because Dr. Manhattan's American. In the comic, they just try to kill the aliens. And if they can't do that, they'd eventually go back to war with each other. Even if there was a brief period of peace trying to take out the aliens, there's no way it would last. It would be a very temporary thing at best. It's just human nature. I mean, Watchmen is all about human nature and humans being savage in nature. Whether or not Alan Moore actually thinks that or not, I don't know. That's things Rorschach and the comedian both say. But it's very clearly what it is. Human nature is savage. It just is. We are a brutal species. We are very violent. We have evil tendencies. There is no way in hell that one big incident like that would just immediately change the opinions of all these crazy world leaders we have. There's no way that would permanently stop all war. It's such a crazy, delusional, utopian idea. I don't know why the fuck Alan Moore thinks that's how it would work. That said, Rorschach's journal does go to the New Frontiersman, which I've never read any of the sequel material, nor do I intend to, because I frankly don't think Watchmen needs a sequel, and I frankly think that they're probably all bad. I've seen, clips of the HBO show and reviews of it, and it all looked terrible and woke and garbage. But I've heard Doomsday Clock isn't very good either. I've heard that the Rorschach comics that followed up afterward aren't very good, and it's not even Rorschach, it's another Rorschach. Overall, Alan Moore, I think, is just kooky, and I have a very different interpretation of the story than he intends, which admittedly he's a good writer in the sense that he can write a compelling story with characters that are likable in ways that he didn't intend for them to be, admittedly, but I think he did do a fair job, and I'll give him this. I do think that he did do a fair job at creating interesting characters' psychological profiles. Ozymandias is a fascinating villain. Rorschach is a fascinating hero. The comedian is an excellent character, which brings me to my next opinion. The comedian is a fucking great character. A lot of people don't like the comedian when they first watch it or they first read it because of all the bad things he does, but I think the comedian is one of the most interesting characters in the movie and in the comic. I think that the comedian is just great. I think that he does a lot of bad things. He's an asshole. He's kind of a piece of shit. I know, all understatements, but even he thought that Ozymandias' plan was too much. He could see, no, that's bad. And he kind of has a point when Dr. Manhattan lets him kill that lady and doesn't do anything to stop him. He's like, you could have stopped me. You could turn the gun into steam, the bullets into bubbles, but you didn't. You don't give a damn about human beings, do you? He's right. He could have done something, but he didn't. especially with the way he perceives time, which, granted, maybe the way he perceives time prevents it. It's kind of weird and inconsistent and hard to follow with the way he perceives time, because how could he change his mind if all time is simultaneous? It's very confusing, because he does change his mind later in the story to decide to come back to Earth. But the comedian is great. He's also a badass. Like, he's doing bad things in a lot of different scenes, but he's really cool when he does it. Like, when he's going around shooting the rioters with the rubber bullets, which, by the way, was totally justified. They were having a big-ass riot and they were throwing shit at him. He absolutely was in the right there. And even when he killed the woman who was pregnant with his child, she did stab him first. Like, he was being a piece of shit deadbeat dad type, but she did cut him first, so in a way he was kind of defending himself. Like, admittedly he was being a shithead before that, but he was defending himself. I also just really like his outlook on the world. He saw society's dark underbelly and decided to become a parody of it. That's such an interesting character. He's easily my second favorite character in the story, just because he's so well written and so interesting. But everyone likes to overlook him as just a rapist and a murderer, where he's so much more than that. He's a fascinating character. And speaking of characters, let's get to my next opinion. Dr. Manhattan is kind of lame. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of cool things I like about Dr. Manhattan. His powers are really cool. He doesn't do a whole lot with them in the story, but what he does do is cool. His origin story is fucking awesome. I love his origin story. All the glass and shit he builds on Mars is really cool. I do like how disconnected from society he is, though it can be kind of grating. I think he's also a little bit inconsistent, because the way he perceives time, to me, just kind of seems illogical sometimes, because, again, sometimes he changes his mind, sometimes he knows how things are going. Like, you could argue, oh, it's the distortion caused by Ozymandias, which, yeah, but also, there's other times, even when things are supposedly distorted, that he's still able to figure shit out, because, like, his future is supposedly blocked from his perception, yet he's still able to perceive what's going to happen when he's on Mars. He also has the really dumb line, you know, when you left me, I left Earth. He's a total simp. The entire character completely gets swayed by Laurie, and it's the stupidest way. Like, because he's supposed to be this cool, logical, there are no miracles type guy. And the fact that Laurie was born from the comedian and Silk Spectre, the fact that, your mother loved a man she had every reason to hate, and from that came you, only you, that's a miracle. What? Why is the cool, logical, no miracles type guy swayed by that? That is super mundane compared to a lot of other things. So it's like, why on earth is that the thing that sways him? Why is he so obsessed with this chick? He literally only fell in love with her because she was attractive and young. That's the entire reason he liked her in the first place. Why is he so fucking attached? It makes no sense. Why would someone who has virtually no emotion, although he does have emotion, why would someone who has very muted emotion be so obsessed with her and be such a romantic about it? It's fucking weird. And the fact that he won't condemn Ozymandias for what he does is ridiculous to me. Like, okay, so he's decided he wants to help humanity. Then he agrees to Ozymandias' thing, right? He says, okay, without condoning or condemning, I understand. And, if he was still the cool, logical type, whatever, but this is right after he got really emotional because of Laurie and decided he wanted to save humanity? Like, I think at the very least he should have killed Ozymandias, or someone should have killed Ozymandias at the very least, because it's like, okay, cool, you have your little thing that happened. Now you have this peace, which, again, I think is completely unrealistic. But let the peace stand. Just fucking kill the guy who killed all those people. He's still a murderer who killed millions who needs to be put to death. And I'm not even in favor of the death penalty, but in this case, he just killed millions. It's fresh. He's not in captivity. Take that son of a bitch out, or at the very least, fucking arrest him. And also, if he can perceive the future, how did he not know that Rorschach's journal would get out? Like, you could make the argument, well, he can only see his own future. But how did he not know that Rorschach was keeping the journal? I mean, I guess Rorschach was really good at hiding it or something, but, like, if he ever comes back in any of the sequels, which I know he does in the TV series, then it makes no sense that he wouldn't know about the journal. But again, I don't know if he comes back in Doomsday Clock. I would assume maybe, but I don't know. I know he flew away and said, I'm gonna go make some life of my own, which, okay, he wants to go be a god to another planet now. Okay, whatever, that's fine. I'd be fine with that being the send-off to the character if there weren't so many other issues with him. I just find him strange, because sometimes he's cool and logical, other times he's needlessly romantic, he's a total simp. Like, in the comic, the only reason he teleports Rorschach out of his like, house or base or whatever it is, when Rorschach comes in, you know, he's like, I'm not leaving till I have my say. In the comic, he only kicks Rorschach out because Rorschach upset Laurie, which is fucking stupid. At least in the movie, he sent him out of his own volition because he thought he was just kind of rambling and didn't want to hear it. But yeah, those are my unpopular Watchmen opinions for now. I think probably the most unpopular is the fact that I don't like the author, and I don't particularly care for Dr. Manhattan. Because I know Dr. Manhattan is, like, the second most popular character. I know Rorschach is the most popular. But, yeah, those are my unpopular opinions. I hope you've enjoyed. This has been Fugitive Red Eye. Have a good one. Toodles.